one of you that's come back tonight to deal a little more on this message. I pray that we can say some things tonight to help make our subject a little more understandable. Now, open your Bibles to chapter 11 of the book of Daniel. For many years, this particular passage of Scripture has been misunderstood. It's caused people preaching prophecy to say the Antichrist is to be a Syrian. Because our setting here deals with the latter phases of the Grecian Empire in its final breakup. And the main leading character was Antiochus Epiphanes. He set a type of the man of sin that is to be in the closing out of time. Just because the prophecy originates in the setting of the Syrian people has nothing to do with the man of sin, the world's Antichrist, being a Syrian man. Not so whatsoever. We've got to keep in mind, when we go from the third beast, which was the Grecian Empire, we go to the rise of Rome. And the Bible tells us that the Roman Empire was the last beast that ever was to rule the world to the coming of Christ. However, we have to understand also the Roman Empire was to go through certain political evolutionary changes, because the Roman Empire had the greatest, far widest geographical dominion of all of them. And when we're thinking here in this day, approaching the year 2000, and our president, in the light of what he is aiming to try to put in motion, evil men through the ages of time have plotted to become the sole supreme ruler of the world. But they all came to their end. Nebuchadnezzar, in which God used to chasten Israel, it was the first beast. After Nebuchadnezzar has gained a vast territory of the old world, he began to exalt himself in his own thinking. Look what I have, look what I can do. But he had a strange dream one night. And when Daniel told him what it meant, the king didn't like to hear it, because it showed he would lose his mind and he'd eat grass like an animal. And he'd live in the outdoors like a lunatic. And the prophet told him how many times years would pass over him. And then God gave him back his sensibility. When we think of Pharaoh of Egypt, Egypt was the beginning of, we will say, man's principle of civilization. His empire reached a great esteem. But yet it came to its end. No man has ever been able to succeed to become the sole dominant ruler of the world. Now then, when we think of Bill Clinton, he's got a lot of wild dreams, brothers and sisters. He's got dreams in his mind he never tells you. You just have to watch his actions. As the old proverb, your actions tells us what you're thinking. Now tonight, in the light of our subject that we're on, I pray that what we brought out this morning helps you to better understand what I meant this morning when I said the beast of Revelations 13 is the geographical territory of Europe. Yet there is another side of the beast, that's the Roman Catholic Church. Then there is the Antichrist, that's the man, that's the satanic instrument. That's the Pope. There is no way you're going to get the Pope to sit over the United Nations General Assembly, because it's in the wrong city. But then we have to realize also, if we study the Bible very carefully, nowhere does it say that the coming of Christ and his bride, they're going to destroy the Roman church. The Roman church is destroyed by the ten-horned beast of Revelations 13. You'd have to be knocked down with a club to not see that. And that's all to take place within the sphere of the week. The week starts here and ends over here. That all takes place within this sphere of time. When we said this morning, the Pope, as this period of time, the week of Daniel sets in, yes, he will still be the Pope as we pass through this period of time, leading to the week. When we go into the week, he'll still be the Pope, the head of the Roman Catholic Church, and the governmental administrator of the European continent, with his NATO army. But when we read here, we get a picture of this man of sin. He's referred to as a king here. That makes it look like, how could that be a pope? So I'm going to read it. And then we want to break it down. So the prophet starts in the 36th verse. And the king shall do according, notice, and the king shall do according to his will. Goes to show he will listen to no government. And he shall exalt himself and magnify himself. There's a reason why this is worded like this. It's now becoming more plainer. He will exalt himself and magnify himself above every god. That means above every religion. And shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods. There's only one God. That's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it says, and shall prosper by doing so. He will prosper till the ignition. That's the time of trouble. That's the last part of Daniel's 70th week. The Great Tribulation. Until it be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. In other words, God has already ordained for that period of time to be a time when the nation of Israel will undergo a time of, we will say, racial, political, economic hardships like they've never went before. But this keeps describing the man neither shall he regard the God of his fathers. It sounds like we're leaving from a pope and going to some other kind of a man. No, you're still sticking with the pope. It goes to show, brothers and sisters, he will no longer be the Hail Mary Pope, the Vicar of Christ, as he's been known by in centuries back. There's a reason. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women. Wonder what the women feminist movement will think then. Nor regard any God. For he shall magnify himself above all. There's a reason. But in his estate, in his official place of authority, shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds, political high places. That's the way you'd read it. With a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge, and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. And at the time of the end, shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold, of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. But tidings out of the east. Now we're looking towards China. And out of the north, we're not looking toward Russia. We're looking towards Europe. Shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury, to destroy, and utterly to make away many. And he shall plant the tabernacle of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. This man we've just read about has a short-lived duration, because God will only allow it to be that way. Now let's break it down. I said this morning, if everything that we see taking place in the world today was of the Antichrist nature, and you put the Catholic Church at the head of it, you would not have abortion going on in this country. Look back a few years. When they began to start talking about abortion, the Catholic Church rose against it. You know it. They just did not give it public news in the papers. Practically every Catholic priest spoke out against it, especially from Rome. But the point is this. This spirit that's portrayed here in this man that I've just read about, he regards no God. But that spirit is already in the making. You ought to see it right in your own country. Back in the 50s and the 60s, there was many things going on in this country you could see that was of a very spiritual, deceptive nature. We could see, brothers and sisters, through the charismatic revival and the things going on, that the apostate Gentile church world has now become sold out to that Antichrist spirit. You can sell them anything. After a certain length of time, it seems like that spirit begins to take a back seat. Because none of our political leaders even endorse anything about it. When this other spirit begins to take over, this is that other spirit that's to run parallel. And this is that spirit that will be on the beast, on the kings of the nations, that will bring the armies of the nations together and fulfill exactly what we read in Revelation 19, verses 11 through 20. Somewhere between where we're at now, in 99, and the beginning of the week, there will be absolutely a miraculous era of a war take place in the Middle East. It's got to be. It's God's way of throwing everything out of kilter. That type of a war will actually cause a lot of eyes to be opened. Not necessarily politicians. Governments will keep right on drifting in the trend they're supposed to drift. But there will be thousands upon thousands of subject people in the various nations around the world will suddenly get their eyes open and to realize there's a God, and they will acknowledge it's the God of the Jew. That's why Micah 7 reads exactly like it does. That's exactly why Micah 7 says, and the heathen. Don't point your finger to the Bushmen in Africa. Point them to the Wall Street in New York City. And the heathen will come crawling out of their holes with their hands over their mouths. That's an expression suddenly struck with fear and utter surprise. It's the beginning of how God begins to deal with the children of Israel, that sets the stage for the prophets to come on the scene then. As then the old city goes through a renovation and the temple is built, all of that is going to be going on. Somewhere from in here, carried over into here. The Pope's still a religious man. He still thinks in the religious realm. He's sitting in Rome. He's watching this take place. As he watches this display of God's power, this man is going to begin to think. He's never saw anything like this before in all of his life. As he does, then suddenly, brothers and sisters, he sees two men, Jewish men, coming on the scene. He hears some of the prophetic utterances they begin to speak out to the Jewish people. As he does, he's going to be compelled to look and watch the miracles. We will say plagues of the different things that the two prophets will pronounce. Waters will be turned to blood. Different things will be affected. The same type of miracles went on in Egypt, so will these two prophets pronounce in that hour of time. And we're in the year 2000 and something. Let's look at it in that light. Because 2000 is just coming up 6 months from now. As the Pope of that hour has to watch this, he's suddenly going to become, I'm going to say this, possessed with a supernatural syndrome. Now, why'd you say that, Brother Jackson? It's going to affect his spirituality. He's been a man that the whole world has worshiped and adored because they look to him as a representative of Christ. But he is absolutely the agent of Satan at the head of the largest body of religious people there is in this world. When he sees these two prophets, having also witnessed the miracles on the battlefield, how God used the Jewish army, that man cannot help but begin to question himself. By the time he watches this, each day, each week, each month, for 3.5 years, don't tell me, no, it'll not be this present Pope. This present Pope is too old and too weak. But he's definitely going to be a younger man, of a stronger physique, and no doubt a younger man that somehow or other has lent more toward the materialistic side of society. When he begins to see this and recognize, the devil is going to begin to put thoughts in his mind. He will probably say, if that's allowed to go on, this whole world will be changed by that. You know what the Bible says. And in the middle of the week, he, the Pope, the one called the Antichrist, also the false prophet. There's no two men. Your charismatic preachers are preaching there's going to be an Antichrist and a false prophet. That's hogwash. The one and the same man is the devil's instrument to fulfill it all. As he sees this, what these two men have done, Satan is going to literally come into that man's mind and mold a conception of thought. And he's going to say, let me get my hands on them. And the Bible says, no man durst hurt them until they have prophesied 1,203 days. Then it says, and the beast, at the head of the, being led by the man of sin, will come to Jerusalem. Now, when he comes to Jerusalem, let's try to analyze what's his motive. Think of that seriously. What's the Antichrist's motive? You might think, well, he's trying to show that the Catholic Church is more powerful, and then that's just what he's been watching. That's where you missed it. He's going to come to that place because there's a thought. And he's going to begin to exercise some powers that are demonic. He's going to have a hatred in his heart that knows no end for mercy. That's why he will kill the two prophets right at this point. He'll put old Jerusalem under martial law, his type. And for 3.5 years, Jerusalem will be under the dictates of a man that has taken over the new temple that's been built. And he's going to show and exercise some demonic powers, not in the sense, great miracles of such like, but it's his ways by the material substance he has at his disposal. He'll begin to walk over people, subdue people. This is why, keep in mind, the Muslim world has already been changed. It's changed back in here. That's why Egypt and Syria, Saudi Arabia, and all of them will be on the side of the Jew. When them Arab states begin to see what this man of sin has done, they're definitely going to try to come to the rescue of the Jew. That sets your stage for him to begin to have conflict with the Arabs in that area. The whole Middle East will absolutely go through a tumult hour, because the two prophets through this period have told those spiritual Jews that's been sealed in their forehead with the revelation who Jesus Christ was, where to go when this man comes and does this. Because in the 12th chapter of Revelations, it says, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath, that's a past tense word, already been selected by God. A place prepared there by God. And there, in that place, they, who is the people that's there, not a bunch of baboons in Ethiopia, but it will be a people that have been made sympathizers with the Jewish cause. Because the devil's plot is, if ever this earth and mankind is to be able to carry out his 20th century ideas of modern philosophy and materialism, we've got to exterminate this whole cause of religion. And you've got to wipe the Jewish nation off the face of the earth. Because that's where, brothers and sisters, we get our Bible. Christianity, the history of it comes from Israel. You know it. The whole Bible, it comes from Israel, the Jews. It doesn't matter what nation you come from or what race you belong to. Your knowledge of the one true God comes from the Jewish Bible. And as the man of sin, as he's watched the power of God and the miracles of God, this should tell him he is no co-equal to it. But the devil is going to anoint him for a little period of time, and he will think he is. That's why he will worship no other God than a strange God. In reality, his thoughts not upon, I believe in the unknown God. His thoughts are absolutely bent on the fact, I feel a power surging in me that gives me the right to carry out this dream or this idea. And brothers and sisters, behind it is none other than Satan, who is out to take a slap against God. That's why, brothers and sisters, in this last half of the week, the racial, national people of the Jews will undergo one of the most terriblest times of martyrdom, persecution, ridiculement, facing annihilation that's ever been in the history of the human race. Because the devil wants to get rid of that people. When you take that right to the 12th chapter and the last verses, when the man that stood on the river dressed in white was asked by one of the men, the angel, on the bank of the river, how long shall this be? The answer that Daniel got was this: when he, the man of sin, that now is in Jerusalem, sitting in the temple, and will be there for 3.5 years, when he has accomplished the power or the right to scatter the holy people, Well, who are the holy people? The children of Israel. Then all of this shall come to an end. That's why Daniel 12 says, and there will be a time of trouble, such as there never was before, and neither shall there be hereafter. Now, let's try to supervise this. As he's in Israel, there's things that develop in the political sphere of the whole world. And may I say this, every nation on this planet is then not under the control of a new world order. If you ever think you can get China, sure, she's a member of the new world order. But don't never think and be so foolish to think that China is going to knuckle down. And let some ornery politician from the Western world come in there and tell them how to apply some environmental program. You just as well climb a tree. In here, there's an article. Our president has already given New World Order environmentalists, which are not even citizens of the United States people. They are individual politicians from other nations. But they've been delegated when this New World Order thing is to go in. They will be given to the supervision of certain geographical land terrain environments that affect minerals resources, water resources, forestry, pasturing, agricultural land. People, a lot of Americans have gone sound asleep. They think you're just talking to be rattling your teeth. But brothers and sisters, it's standing right outside the door. Every farmer in America ought to wake up to the realization that piece of land he owns it today. But by the time this crazy bunch of New World environmentalists just begin to try to put in their restrictions, that poor farmer is going to begin to realize, what went with my American freedom? What went with it? I might say this. Up to a certain point, the Antichrist system in its hour, yes, it might condone and go along with certain environmental things. But that's not its uttermost. This other spirit that we see in the nations, in the beast when it reaches that hour, they're ready now to make war against Christ. Because heaven's been opened. The week of Daniel's coming to a close. It's time to take this crazy satanic control man and bring him to an end. We want to watch it. How will he be brought to an end? This is why, brothers and sisters, the spirit that's right now in America is the very spirit that's going to live somehow or other through the structures of the world to lead the nations to that hour. And I have to say, brothers and sisters, sitting right before me is a people. In the eyes of modern man, you don't look like much. In the eyes of modern philosophers, you are the last things that ought to be allowed to live here. Because you can cause them trouble. They will look upon you as a fanatic, a nut. We don't need religious people like you. But if I look and read the Bible right, it's going to take people like us that's willing to live up to something and to let a few other people know someday what we do know and what they don't know. Also in here, I won't even take time to read it. There are questions written by famous people, journalists, educators. What kind of a man do we have in the White House? And some are saying he is a psychopathic murderer. Different ones out of the state of Arkansas have said, we know of at least 50 cases of people, lives being snuffed out. All evidence prove this man has some connection in every case. Not that he had hands-on in the initial way it went, but behind it, he furnished the brains. Brothers and sisters, I like to say this. That is not the spirit of the Antichrist. Because he don't point you to no kind of a Christ. He don't tell you to pray the rosary or nothing. When he was accused by the Lewinsky case, how that hypocrite could take the Bible and sit and read. What did he do that for? Because he sees the American people are dumb. They have been hoodwinked, he thinks, by religious fanatics. So therefore, he stoops to this tactic that he's trying to reach repentance, reconciliation, getting his heart consoled back with God. But when it's all over, he is just as diabolic as he ever was. That is not an antichrist spirit. That is a satanic spirit that don't trust, don't believe, and doesn't care to defy God at any cost. That's why he has stepped over the word and put gays in the military. Anytime a man can look in the scriptures, see those things that are written there as warnings and signs of the end time, and not see them for himself, that should tell you what kind of a spirit is guiding him. So, brothers and sisters, you are looking at a miniature type of the leader that I've just read about. By the time he's gone through this, and he's approaching right here. That's not making Bill Clinton the Antichrist nor the beast man. I'm just using that as a preparatory picture of the spirit you must see. Because keep in mind, when the 10 horns back here, while in this period of time, when it says in the 17th chapter, they will hate the whore. That means it's not here when they do. It's not here when they do. But by the time has come somewhere in this proximity, now the European nations are tired of it. They want no more to do with it. And it says that they will gnash upon her. They will confiscate every bank account And they will take possession of all Catholic properties throughout Europe. And don't think it don't run into billions of dollars. They own the water companies, the gas companies, and the sources of energy throughout Europe. Don't think the governments of Europe don't know what the Catholic Church has been in days gone by. So God's going to let them bring her to an end. When it does, that's going to cause the man of sin who is sitting over here in Israel now to begin to realize he can no longer claim to be the religious leader of that system because now it's done for. He's now a man that's going to show the world that he has got a dream. And the devil's going to anoint him with some ideas, brothers and sisters, that are so satanic. And you're going to see a man step on the scene. I didn't mean that you're going to, if you and I are in the rapture, we'll not be here. But the world will see a man that is so bitter against religion, against God, and everything that there is that denotes there is a God. And Satan, through him, is going to cause him to act and portray himself. That's why he will worship no other God other than the God of materialism, science, gold, silver. And brothers and sisters, it is a known fact. Modern political men today of all the nations are all moving toward by saying, modern man for the 21st century must begin to put in a type of government wherein the rich will control the wealth of the world. If the rich can control the wealth of the world, then we can make the populations a servant to our ideas. Socialism will become the order of the day. Some say it's communism. Well, it will be a new brand of communism, political-wise. Because even now those that harbor and entertain a communistic idea knows this. 80 years in Russia proved their brand didn't work. But there is a socialistic thought of it in this. Yes, the government controls the flow of money. And brothers and sisters, I don't even have time to tell you what their ideas is, which I know this. That's why God will destroy it at his coming. But I've got to describe it in this fashion. That man of sin now, he's called the false prophet of Revelation 19. As he begins to carry on his conversation and his negotiating process with political systems of the world, that's why it says, he will begin to influence them in high places. Well, what is high places? It's nothing but political governments of nations. Thus shall he do in the most stronghold. That's not talking about a gun bunker. That's talking about political headquarters. And so, brothers and sisters, when I see this president, he has a little image and a display of a diabolical spirit. He has no morality. He has no spirituality. He has no respect for his fellow man whatsoever. He's drunk on power. In actuality, he's a demon. Why do you say that, Brother Jackson? When it says in Revelation 13, and there was that lamb beast that come up out of the earth, that means it was not in the old world that it appeared. It come up out of the earth, a part of the planet separate from the sea that represents the old world and the mass of people. America came up, and God gave her birth under Christian light. And for many decades, it lived. A gentle, little nation, led by men that put God first. But we've come here to the threshold of the 20th century, also to the threshold of the coming of Christ. And somehow or other it says that lamb beast, in its end time role, it spoke as a dragon. That lets you know somewhere it lost the voice of the Christian recognition. And you've seen it yourself. Washington don't want to acknowledge you at all in your religious affiliations. Just as I read the other night that letter of where, out in the state of Kansas, when they called the General Assembly together, and they asked this man to lead the thing in prayer. 6 of their state senators got up and walked out. That's not Antichrist. That's anti-God. Would you agree with me? If the Pope would have been in there, you'd have seen all Hail Marys and this and that. But when they get up and stalk out, it means, don't talk about God in my presence. Don't you be carrying a Bible around here. I don't want to sit. That's demonic. It's a spirit that's trying to take over the last framework of human government. That's why, brothers and sisters, we titled it Showdown at Sundown. Because when all of this does take its place, the sun will be going down on the last chapters, on the last months of human history. As man has made history since the beginning of Eden. Because when it comes up again, there's going to be somebody else at the head of it. It's going to be a new beginning, and the righteous will rule and reign. In this program here, in this news item, across this nation, questions are flowing into the different newspapers, to the journalists. Why don't somebody do something? I even asked the question, why don't somebody do something with this man? They all say behind him somewhere is 50 men or cases. He's guilty of having pronounced the death. Some are policemen. Some are school teachers. And now it is being said, not by characters like me or Brother Allen, men whose voice has far more weight in the social picture, that Bill Clinton is behind the Oklahoma episode. He was behind Waco, Ruby Ridge. Why don't somebody scream out? He's power crazed. He will stop at nothing. He will defy the very Constitution we've lived by. How much longer will this man? I'm saying this, brothers and sisters, because we're living right in here somewhere. The week hasn't started. But we're looking at a spirit that's going to ride on an element of humanity all through this time. And right over here is where it meets its doom. Christ is the answer to this atheistic, demonic, sadistic spirit that wants to settle in and make everybody on this planet a devil. And that's what she's headed for. If there ain't a God, that's the idea of modern man. Because when he goes into that 21st century, there will be no Pope nor Hail Marys. The Bible will be forgotten. Because the planet will head into space under atheism, no God. That's why the coming of Christ is the end of it all. But as we look at it now, where did this spirit originate? Right here in this God-fearing country called America. Ain't that a shame? This lamb beast, since the close of World War II, it restored the first beast. It given its back its geographical territory, restored, rebuilt. We've kept hundreds and thousands of troops there for these 50 years to defend it while it is slowly rising back into preeminence. We kept an Air Force. With our technology of military superiority, we held communism at bay. We have 70,000 troops in Germany now. We got 20-some thousand in South Korea. We have several thousand, according to this article, in Japan. We've got 20-some thousand over there in Bosnia. Supposed to be brought home now after the bombing stops. In here it tells where we've got little detachments of soldiers. In the Sinai Desert, between Israel and Egypt, we have 900 troops living in the boiling hot sun of the desert. Peacekeepers. Our nation has become a bully. It's got the vision. We're going to keep peace to the world. Brothers and sisters, this is the sad part. God ain't going to let this go on forever. When we've spent the last dollar that it takes to put everything else in the world so that the scriptures will be fulfilled, I cannot help but believe that's when God's going to let George Washington's vision drop right in our lap. And when it does, young people, it's wonderful tonight across the land of America. Young people are sitting in front of TV tubes, watching videos, watching comics, watching all kinds of movies, eating their popcorn, Cracker Jacks, having a wonderful time of relaxation. Never been a nation on earth like it. But as that old American spirit ever rises, and as them early patriots, the Minutemen, when that night that Paul Revere, as the poem said, burned one by land and two by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and to spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm. They're even putting Paul Revere on the new quarters now. America is walking right toward her darkest hour. And I have to say, brothers and sisters, Young people, I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but only to tell you the truth. Don't sit back and fold your arms and say, Lord, don't come now. I got too many years. I want to enjoy this. You're going to see some hell in the streets of America before this spirit is gotten out of here. That's why I have to say, brothers and sisters, we don't need a man like this to run the world. Because when the real man that will be over the European Peninsula, the European beast system, and then we'll go to the Holy Land, he will be the devil's tyrant. And I was reading in the book that's got the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution in it. One of our favorite fathers of our Constitution and our government in years gone by says, when the government fear the people, you have peace. But when people have to fear the government, you got tyranny. You got fear. And now this man will come along and he will put a tax quota to pay for his little war that he used to build himself into a point of prestige. In here is a story about Madeleine Albright. She was in on this. When she was a small girl, there was a picture taken right in the same country where they were at. When she was a small girl and a little boy hugging each other as playmates. But when Hitler's hour arose, her father took them and left there. Later, she was adopted and raised as Catholic. And now she is an Episcopalian. She's a politician. She's a Jew that don't even know her God. She too is power crazed. And it says in there that some of the Serbian people said, thank you, Madeleine, for your little gift. Meant the bombs are dropping. Because she lived there when she was a little girl. But now she's a grown woman. She's got politics in her mind. I read it this evening. As I looked at this thing, I thought to myself, God only knows the blindness, the ignorance that our politicians have shot in the arm of the American society. Now then, let me try to bring everything up to this point. Yes, from here through here is the Antichrist spirit on the European system and everything. You read it in the 17th chapter. Writing that European system is that woman of Revelation 12. John was told by the angel, come here, and I will show you the judgment of the great whore. Naturally, it was portrayed to him in pictorial form. He saw this beast, was really an animal, but sitting there was this magnificent, beautiful-looking woman. Looked like a lot of these streetwalkers today with not enough of clothes on. Holding high in her hand a cup of her diabolical intoxication. That's to ride straight on throughout the beginning of this period. But by the time she reaches this point, something happens in Europe, and them governments will get their heads together and they will turn against that apostate system that's dominated, infiltrated, their governments for centuries. And it's a fact. Within the framework of them European governments, there has been more than one political leader assassinated by a papal hitman. When all of that begins to come to accountability, no wonder the political leaders of Europe will get their heads together and say, let's stop this nonsense. This religious woman ain't nothing. Because they will have the records of their histories to prove she has rode them, they've supported her, and she has lived on tax exemption, tax exemption, tax exemption. So the idea is this: when then the world system of that hour throws off religion, which is only an apostate thing, now then the world is headed for an era of time that's nothing but atheism, science, materialism. That's why the God of gold and silver and the material things of the world, man's means of progress, man's initiative, will become the order and the means of the day. This is why there's no doubt in my mind, when that church system is absolutely done away with, it is going to create within the European geographical structure a little period of, we will say, instability. Because anything of that nature will do that. This is why when you look then to the Orients will begin to say, if ever we struck, if ever we took an opportunity to strike the West, let's do it now. Keep in mind, the kings of the East have got to have some motivation. They're not coming to have an ice cream social with Europe. They're coming to see if they cannot take over, and that their technology that they have stole from us will help them now to gain superiority over Europe. That's why I said this morning, Genghis Khan tried it and failed. And if we can look at the scriptures just right, yes, think of it. Out of the Far East, there will be massive armies put together. Giant armadas of aircraft will fly these men to certain staging points. And God says he will bring them into a place called, in the Hebrew tongue, Armageddon. It means the valley of Megiddo. And there, brothers and sisters, is where the false prophet who's sitting in Israel now, there's where he will take his European police force, and they will meet head on. And brothers and sisters, in that valley of Megiddo, there will be an engagement of human military might, equipped with all the modern technology that modern man could have at that hour. And the Bible said, and the blood shall flow to the bridle of the horse. Dead bodies will lie from one end of that valley to another. Who's the winner, Brother Jackson? The European system. The Bible doesn't say that the European system has sold out her military might. Right in here, as we've had other statesmen in the past, we must keep our military potential at an all-time high. This woman, Madeleine Albright, said this: well, if you want that kind of an army, why can't we use it? Woman, what do you want to use it for? Carry on some diabolical plan of your own? So the point is this: This man that we've got there, and it says it right in here, he has sold it to China in return for political money that will help him in office. And I have to say, that in the eyes of God is treason. If a soldier back in 1800 and something would have done their nation that way, you know what the penalty is? The firing squad. So the point is tonight, brothers and sisters, China has now nuclear capability. It tells in here how many cruise missiles we have left after the Bosnian War, with no plans of starting the assembly lines up to restore them. We're supposed to be working on some new high-phase ones, but none of them are in operation. With no aircraft carriers in the Pacific, no battleships, we have absolutely closed the door to the Orients. And I have to say, from this time here, however you want to reckon it, till we reach somewheres in here, the Orients will have all the atomic power they need. Now we can see where it come from. Now we can see how accurate the Bible is. And he saw the Euphrates River dried up. That's only a symbol that it no longer acts as a geographical barrier to earth, foot, motivated armies. That the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. When that hour comes, they're coming by the millions. And what a war it's going to be, but it ain't going to last long. Brothers and sisters, that conflict will bring us to the end of the week. This sets the time factor for heaven to be opened. Christ is ready to make his descent to earth. I have to say, if Washington's vision is true, America has went through the washer of God's cleansing product. That's the only thing that will keep America from facing dilemma, destruction, and annihilation by the coming of the Lord. This is why, brothers and sisters, it would be hard to get a lot of these preachers on television to even think like this. But if America is not cleansed, America just as well get ready to head for annihilation. How many understand what I mean? And you know, and I know. If this, the coming of Christ, it says, out of his mouth goes a sharp two-edged sword, that with it he should smite the nations. Take that to Isaiah, and it says, and the dead bodies shall lie from one end of the earth to the other. But wherever that place is at, that was prepared there by God, that woman in Israel might flee to that place. Why should that woman flee there to be fed and protected, then only to meet this day and in the end be destroyed? How many get my point? Why should God take her from one geographical spot to another only to meet the same dilemma? So it all goes to show, wherever that place is at, it must go through some kind of a cleansing before this time factor all evolves and comes about. So, brothers and sisters, I'm going to close this. I hope you understand a little bit tonight. And I have to say, as we get closer to this period of time, you will see things come upon the political horizon of time that will even let you see more and more just how this thing is so uniquely being fit right into the picture. And that's why, brothers and sisters, I want to be on the Lord's side. I know there is not a devil out of hell that can stop the coming of Christ. But when you look at this New World Order agenda, that's why I say, brothers and sisters, it's utterly impossible for it to succeed in applying its dominion throughout the world. Because it'll mean Israel will have to remain cooped up in a quart jar. Then Isaiah 60 cannot be fulfilled. And there won't be no miracle war in the Middle East. A lot of prophecy goes unchecked. But I know, brothers and sisters, just as sure as we're here, everything's going to go exactly the way the Scripture brings it out. Everything is fallen in place. Here we have this devilish spirit right here in the nation that give the world the gospel, the knowledge of Jesus Christ, that gave the Jews from the Middle Ages a sanctuary in this new horizon. They came here as poor people. I've got their own history. The rabbis that wrote it, they came with hardly any clothing. On ships, they made their ways across the European continent just to get to the shorelines of Europe, just to go to the New World. They came here as carpetbaggers, peddlers, as they landed at Ellis Island and was processed through the immigration system. They were taken into the city. Some of them already had relatives there. And brothers and sisters, there are over 5 million Jews in America today. 2 million and point some thousand in Canada, which makes about a little over 7.5 million people in North America alone. This new world gave them a sanctuary. It gave them a haven. And now then, those same Jews, you can't say they're carpetbaggers. They control the textiles. They own the stocks and bonds on Wall Street. They're the head of financial institutions. I have to say, God let them have a good place. So, brothers and sisters, let's live and walk for the Lord. Because we're not living in a day that we plan how many more years are we going to live here. This world's getting ready to be folded up. And God's going to turn it into something else. Heavenly Father, tonight, take these words. You put them together, Lord, that we may know how, Lord, to look at things. Bless my brothers and sisters. Keep us ever, Lord, true and faithful to you. We ask this now in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.